Taiwan invests in military kamikaze drones. One country might switch allegiances back to Taiwan, and a Chinese billionaire gets arrested in the U.S. And more on this week's China News Headlines. Welcome to China Uncensored. I'm Chris Chappell. This episode is sponsored by Surfshark. Whenever you go online, you should be using a VPN like Surfshark to cover your tracks and protect your identity. Taiwan unveiled 5 new types of homemade military drones this week. Among them are drones that can conduct surveillance, drones that can carry weapons, and drones that can cruise like a normal airplane and then do a kamikaze dive at a target and explode. Taiwan said it would aim to produce 3,000 drones next year in partnership with private companies. And Taiwan has been increasing its defense spending a lot in recent years. It comes as China gets more and more aggressive, like by repeatedly flying its fighter planes into Taiwan's air defense identification zone. Taiwan is also preparing for another Chinese invasion scenario, a total blockade. That means Taiwan has to prepare its strategic fuel reserve and military repair capabilities, not to mention ensure food and supplies for its 24 million people. The Chinese Communist Party has repeatedly said they plan to take Taiwan by force if necessary. They've also said that Taiwan is already theirs. It's like saying you're dating Samara Weaving as soon as you convince her, through force if necessary. But instead of simply sending boatloads of troops across the Taiwan Strait, the Communist Party may begin its war on Taiwan by creating strategic choke points to prevent foreign forces like the U.S. from providing assistance. A new report by Taiwan's defense ministry said that recently, the communist military's exercise and training model has been adjusted from a single military type to joint operations of land, sea, air, and rocket forces. The report also said that China is now adopting an actual war approach and shifting from training to combat preparation. But I'm sure that doesn't mean China's seriously planning to invade Taiwan. That's about as likely as Russia invading Ukraine. Even insane dictators wouldn't do anything that insane, right? The US, UK, and Australia are preparing for China's invasion with a security partnership called AUKUS, probably because Yusuka sounds like an off-brand crotch rocket. Anyway, in the latest AUKUS announcement, Biden met with the prime ministers of those countries to announce a major submarine deal. The U.S. will be selling its allies nuclear-powered submarines, a technology the U.S. guards very closely. As part of that deal, the U.S. will sell Australia 3 submarines, and they cost a mere $3 billion each. And the first one will be delivered by around 2032. Which will be, I'm guessing, 3 to 5 years after China invades Taiwan. Way to give them a gift long after they really need it. Maybe Australia can re-gift it to their niece or something. Happy birthday, Tina. China's foreign ministry spokesman reacted to the AUKUS deal this week by saying the 3 countries are walking further and further down the path of error and danger. I'm not sure he understands that these submarines are nuclear powered, not nuclear armed. They just use uranium fuel instead of diesel. Seriously, the Chinese Communist Party needs to calm down over the submarine thing. Not because of the nuclear stuff, because the submarines won't actually come in time to stop China's invasion of Taiwan. The nation of Honduras has said it will consider switching its diplomatic alliance from Taiwan to China. Why? Well, they likely weighed all the options, did a lot of soul searching, and realized we want some of that Chinese money. Hydroelectric dams won't build themselves, you know. Their morals are on shakier foundation than whatever dam China builds for them. If Honduras makes the switch, it will leave only 13 countries in the world that still recognize Taiwan. Since the Communist Party took over mainland China in 1949, countries have been gradually switching alliances from Taiwan to China. No country has ever switched the other way. But that could change very soon. The Federated States of Micronesia is now in talks to switch diplomatic relations from Beijing to Taiwan. Why? Maybe because the president is concerned about China's political warfare and bribing his government's officials. I'm surprised Xi Jinping doesn't wear MC Hammer pants. because that's the only way I can imagine him being able to fit all the politicians he has in his pockets. President David Panuelo is not just concerned about his own country. He understands that the Chinese Communist Party wants to use all the Pacific Island nations strategically in its bid to take over Taiwan. In a letter last year to various officials in the region, Panuelo wrote that China is seeking to acquire access and control of our region, with the result being a fracturing of regional peace, security, and stability. So, the Chinese Communist Party is dangerous. And that's not enough of a reason to switch allegiance from China. Taiwan is also offering Micronesia $50 million for it. Wait, Taiwan is paying people $50 million to switch allegiances? Is it too late for me to switch allegiances to China and then back to Taiwan? Daddy needs a new pair of everything. And after the break, the U.S. connection with the virus lab in Wuhan gets stupider. Welcome back. An update on that Chinese lab where COVID-19 may have leaked from. Just a few weeks ago, the U.S. Energy Department and the FBI both suggested that COVID-19 most likely came from a Chinese lab, leading some to say, yes, a Chinese labrador. Stop questioning that it came from nature. No, if it's any lab, it's probably this one, the Wuhan Institute of Virology, where Chinese scientists were experimenting with bat coronaviruses to see if they could make them spread more easily among humans. The same lab where experiments that should have been conducted under strict biosafety level 4 conditions were sometimes conducted only under biosafety level 2. U.S. diplomats had warned about safety issues at the lab in 2018, but no one listened. And U.S. government agencies like the NIH and USAID continued to provide money to that Chinese lab for its research. Because what's the worst that could happen? Well, now it gets even worse. Not only did the U.S. government help fund that lab in Wuhan, but it may have been double billed for it. A former federal investigator working for U.S. Senator Roger Marshall said she found evidence that points to double billing, potential theft of government funds. The U.S. government may have made duplicate payments for possible medical supplies, equipment, travel, and salaries. Tens of millions of dollars may have been involved. I mean, it's an honest mistake to accidentally fund a global pandemic that killed millions of people, but getting charged for it twice? Now someone's going to need to face some consequences. Any discussion about COVID's origins has been met with tight censorship inside China. That's understandable. But it's kind of weird what else has been censored this week. Xi Jinping's unanimous re-election as president. See, at a meeting of China's rubber stamp Congress last week, every single one of the 2,592 delegates voted for Xi Jinping. They're not even trying to pretend like it's a democracy anymore. What do you mean? Democracies always have trap doors that open and drop anyone that doesn't vote for you to an agonizing doom, don't they? Many Chinese citizens were unhappy to see the vote be unanimous because clearly not 100% of people support Xi Jinping. So even though the vote tally itself was publicly reported across China, reposting that exact same information online is now considered not okay. Because people were reposting it, but sarcastically? If anyone understands the problem, it's State-Run People's Daily from the year 2011, when they presciently wrote, "If the people's will continues to be hijacked through unanimous elections, it will fuel public resentment." That article aged well, or poorly, because it's now disappeared faster than a Chinese dissident. And after the break, China helps broker a peace deal with Iran and Saudi Arabia. Welcome back. China and the U.S. clashed over Uyghurs at a UN Islamophobia event this week. It was during the first International Day to Combat Islamophobia, which will now be held every March 15th. The U.S. ambassador to the UN talked about how the Chinese government has committed genocide and crimes against humanity against the predominantly Muslim Uyghurs in Xinjiang. So it's great that she said that, right? Wrong. Because the International Day to Combat Islamophobia has been co-sponsored with Muslim nations by Beijing. That's like an international Stop Ruining Pizza Day co-sponsored by the Noid. The Chinese representative responded to accusations of Muslim genocide by accusing the U.S. of, quote, abusing the United Nations event. The U.S. representative should have just held up a mirror for him. Although considering what blood-sucking monsters the CCP are, I'm not sure he'd have a reflection. Sadly, nearly every Muslim-majority nation has been silent about China's genocide of Uyghurs in Xinjiang. They prefer to develop close economic ties with China. Seems like they also did some of that soul-searching and came to the same conclusion as Honduras. And this week, China helped broker a peace deal between the two biggest Muslim rivals, Saudi Arabia and Iran. The two nations have been at each other's throats for decades. They even fought a proxy war in Yemen that killed hundreds of thousands of people. Saudi Arabians are Sunni Muslims and Iranians are Shiites. That's been a huge barrier. But China was able to bridge that gap because the atheist Chinese Communist Party doesn't care about the difference. All China can see is how many wonderful things Saudi Arabia and Iran have in common. They're both authoritarian. They both commit lots of human rights atrocities against their own people. And most important, they both sell oil to China. Why not work together? Peace in the Middle East is something we 90s kids have hoped for a long time. But like many deals involving China, while at first it may seem great, it might not actually come to anything. Which might just be for the best, since I'm pretty sure we'd need Superman to defeat this in Justice League. The U.S. Justice Department arrested Chinese business tycoon Guo Wengui on Wednesday, charging him in a $1 billion fraud conspiracy. Guo had made his fortune in Chinese real estate through his connections with top party officials. But he fled China in 2014 after he learned that Chinese authorities were planning to arrest him on charges including bribery, fraud, and money laundering. Guo ended up seeking exile in the U.S. In the U.S., he set up his own website and media company, GTV Media Group, which posted news related to China and denounced the Chinese Communist Party. We actually did an episode about Guo Wengui years ago. It predates some of his more recent activities, but it does give you a good background on Guo and his ties to certain CCP officials. Fans of the people's favorite communist soap opera, General Hostility, will definitely want to check it out. The link is below. Anyway, Guo and his media amassed hundreds of thousands of online followers. Guo may have exposed lots of crimes committed by CCP officials, but he also drove a wedge into the Chinese-American anti-CCP community. He got into fights with several well-known Chinese dissidents who were living in the U.S. In 2020, in a curious twist for an anti-CCP crusader, Guo began loudly denouncing Chinese dissidents in a series of videos calling for his followers to eliminate roughly 20 people he deemed traitors. After that, many of those dissidents' homes were picketed by Guo supporters. Guo promised his online followers large returns if they invested in GTV or some of his other companies. But now, the U.S. Justice Department is charging Guo with orchestrating a complex conspiracy to defraud thousands of his online followers out of over $1 billion. According to the Justice Department, Guo raised over $1 billion from thousands of supporters for his business ventures, including GTV Media Group, an exclusive membership club called G Clubs, and a supposed cryptocurrency ecosystem called the Himalaya Exchange. Because of course there was a cryptocurrency. But instead of putting the money into his businesses, Guo allegedly used it to line his own pockets, including buying himself and his relatives a 50,000 square foot mansion, a $3.5 million Ferrari, and even two $36,000 mattresses, and financing a $37 million luxury yacht. I, for one, am absolutely shocked that someone who poses for pictures like this could defraud his followers to buy himself a luxury yacht. Allegedly. According to my favorite Chinese state-run media, the Global Times, the Chinese economy is doing great. A doublethink. China is stepping up measures to boost insufficient demand, while deflation claims are baseless. Economists know that low demand can lead to deflation, that is, prices dropping. Of course, that's not happening in China. It's a baseless claim. But on the off chance deflation is happening, which it isn't, China is stepping up measures to boost that insufficient demand. And in a communist country, everything is driven by the state, so if Chinese people want to save money because they're worried about the future, say more lockdowns ahead, maybe they won't spend as much. Or maybe they just don't have much money to spend because of past lockdowns. Either way, those people are wrong. The government wants them to spend their money now. And I wouldn't be surprised if the CCP finds a way to make their money self-destruct like messages in Mission Impossible. Nothing boosts the economy like cash that will literally explode in 5, 4, 3. Talk about a fire sale. I'm just kidding though, no one actually uses physical cash in China anymore. They just use their mobile phones, which are connected to their bank accounts, which means it's a lot easier for the CCP to make their money disappear. A former TikTok employee told Congress the app is lying about Chinese spying. Basically, that is sharing information with Chinese employees at its Chinese parent company. TikTok responded by saying, "Nuh-uh," and then distracting us with a video of a guy making a chocolate velociraptor. Wow, that is a lot of chocolate. Wait, what was I talking about? A record low percentage of Americans view China favorably, according to the latest Gallup poll. It's the lowest it's ever been since Gallup started collecting this data in the late 1970s. It's much lower than even right after the Tiananmen Square massacre, when 34% of Americans were still like, yeah, China's great. China said, massacre? What massacre? Thanks for not turning on us, you adorable 34%ers, you. But thanks to COVID and China's threats to Taiwan, and maybe even all the ethnic genocide, now only 15% of Americans view China favorably. And if you're wondering why there are still 15%, well, it has to do with a small number of influential elites who have vested interests in China. And many of them control the media. Stay tuned for my episode uncovering that tomorrow. They're about as ride or die as it gets. And this episode is sponsored by Surfshark. When you go online, everything you do is being tracked and logged by the websites you visit and your internet service provider, and in many cases by your government. That's why no matter where you live or what you do online, you should always be keeping your internet activity private with a VPN. And now Surfshark has servers you can connect to in over 100 countries. That's more than any other VPN. So that makes your connection faster and more reliable. Plus, Surfshark has top-of-the-line encryption and a no-logs policy, meaning they don't collect your browsing data. In fact, Surfshark was rated Editor's Choice for the best VPN for privacy and security by PC Mag. So check out Surfshark. With just one Surfshark account, you can connect as many devices as you want. Try it out now. Surfshark has a special deal that includes 83% off a 2-year plan, plus 3 extra months for free. You can protect yourself for just $2.21 a month. So go to surfshark.com/uncensored and use the code uncensored to secure this deal. The link is in the description below. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. Thanks for watching China Uncensored.